What are the pros and cons to living in Toronto, Ontario? Be sure to stay till the end because I'm going to give you the number one thing I love about Toronto. I've lived in Toronto for over 24 years, and as a native, I believe Toronto is an exceptional city to live in. However, not everyone feels the same. There are definitely some pros and cons and things to love and hate about the city. So in this video, I'm going to discuss the top 10 pros and cons to living in Toronto. If you're new here, my name's Tish and I'm a licensed real estate agent that works in the Toronto and surrounding areas. And I get calls, text messages, and emails from individuals and families like you and you and you and you and you wanting more information on what it's like living or moving to Toronto, Ontario. So whether you're looking to move in the next few days or in the next 90 days, I'd love to help. So please reach out by clicking the link in the description or the link in the first video. So let's start with these pros and cons. So the first pro is that Toronto has rich diversity. Recent census data shows that Toronto has over 50% of visible minorities. And this makes Toronto such a unique area. There are so many people here from different cultures, communities, and countries, and there's a lot of different small communities within Toronto. Like there's a Caribbean community, there's a little Greek community, Italian, African, like there's just such a diverse amount of different communities here that make it such an incredible place to live. The one thing I like about these small communities is that you can actually get traditional cultural items in those areas. So if you're looking to get certain food items or looking to go to a certain restaurant that's attached to a certain culture or country, you can actually find that within the Toronto area. So whether you're looking for, certain food items or certain household items for a specific community that you belong to or another community, there is just so many opportunities to learn about other cultures and other countries through our rich diversity. The second pro to living in Toronto is our strong economy. So our economy has an incredible job sector that's driven by the tech industry, the healthcare industry, and educational industry as well. Toronto has one of the lowest unemployment rates at only 7.1%, and our GDP growth has outpaced the national average. Our population has also doubled in the last 40 years. We're also expecting a 98% population increase by 2041, and we also are expecting over 1 million new jobs to be created in just the next few years. The third pro about Toronto is its central, incredible location. It is located in the middle of the GTA and is within 1 hour to many major neighboring cities. This includes being within an hour to cities in the east, such as Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, and Oshawa. Also, it is within an hour to cities north of Toronto, including Innisfil, Bradford, Barrie, Newmarket, and Vaughan. And it's also within an hour from cities on the west end. So that includes Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, and of course the Kitchener-Waterloo region. So being in the central Toronto area is a huge pro because it allows you to explore job opportunities in those neighboring major cities and will only be about an hour commute. There's also a lot of transit improvements that are happening in these major cities to make traveling to and from Toronto quicker and easier. And the good thing is, to get to these cities, you do not need a car. There's actually public transit options available, such as GO Transit, the TTC, or the VMC. So the fourth pro is the cost of living. So living in Toronto is quite affordable overall. We have various different food options, such as high-end stores like Sobeys and Metro, or we have more affordable stores as well that cater to more low to middle class income families and individuals. And that includes your Walmart, your Freshco, No Frills, Food Basic, Costco. So you have those different options based on what price point you want to shop at and the level of service that you're looking to receive. When it comes to housing prices, there's a ton of different options depending on where you choose to live within the city. So when we talk housing price, the average detached home right now in Toronto is at the 1.2 million mark, while the average semi-detached home is just over 970,000, and the average townhouse is just over 730,000, while the average condo or apartment is just over $630,000. Again, these price points for houses do vary depending on certain areas. There are certain areas where you can find a detached home for under $1 million, and there are other areas where you cannot find a detached home under $1.5 million. So it all varies. So the fifth pro is that you will not be bored in Toronto. There are so many things to do. So there is concert places to go, like the Scotiabank Arena. There's also different sports teams that you could watch. Like we have the Raptors for our basketball team. We have the Maple Leaf for our hockey team. We have the Toronto Argonauts for our football team. So just a ton of things to do. And our diverse culture and atmosphere really makes it easy to find a ton of different restaurants that you can dine at, various different shopping malls, various different festivals for kids, for adults, for people who are elderly. There's just so many opportunities to go out there, meet people, and have a fun time. Now let's get into those cons. So the first con to living in Toronto is that there are areas that suffer from poverty. So you're going to experience those areas that have low income housing, that have higher crime rates, and that are less desirable areas to live in. There isn't a lot of areas like this, but there are small pockets of areas that do have more of a higher poverty population, and it's something that you want to take into account when looking for your next home. The second con is Toronto is currently growing at an insane rate, and because of that, there's a lot of new construction happening. So there's new construction with new condo developments that are going up. So at one point, Toronto actually had the second highest amount of cranes in the sky. And that's because of the tons of new condos that we have coming in and around the Toronto area, especially the downtown core. So there's a lot of new construction, which could add to having increased traffic. So another thing to take into account with construction is that there is a 19-kilometer Eglinton Crosstown LRT that's being built. It's going to have 25 stops across the GTA, which will be great for commuters in the future, but the construction for that project has taken a toll on various individuals and communities because it's been years in the making. Another construction concern that I have and that a lot of commuters have is the Gardiner Expressway. So there's been a lot of talks on this expressway in the last couple of years. It's really convenient because it allows for quicker access to the downtown core. However, because it's so old, it needs a lot of maintenance, and there's tons of times where part of the Gardiner has to be shut down to allow for repairs or construction on that expressway. And that con kind of touches on my third big con with living in Toronto, and that's the traffic. So I always make this joke that it can take you an hour to get from Toronto to Toronto, just depending on where you are in the city. And that's the truth. Toronto is a large city, and depending on the time that you're traveling, it can take you a long time to get from one end of the city to the next. So I always try to tell people to avoid driving during rush hours if possible. So that includes commuting between 8 to 9 and also commuting between 5 to 6, because that's when you have the most people on the roads, and that could just increase traffic and increase your commute time substantially. We also have a lot of one-way roads in Toronto, especially in the downtown core, which can make it a little challenging to drive. So, making sure that you're using your GPS when driving in downtown Toronto is super essential. I lived in downtown Toronto for over 24 years, and I still use my GPS when going to certain areas just to make sure that I'm not accidentally going onto a road that's in the opposite direction than I should be going in. So you have to be cautious of those one-way roads. It can take a while to get used to it. So just use your GPS as a precaution. I also find traffic to be heavier on some highways than others, like the 407. I don't find that ever to have traffic. And the 407 is actually a toll route. So it's a highway where you have to pay a small fee to commute on it. So that is not used as much, and as a result, it can allow you to get to your destination a lot quicker, but it does come with a cost. The other highways that I find to not have as much traffic is the QEW, the 403, and Highway 400. Those highways I find to not be too heavy when it comes to traffic. Even during rush hours, I don't find it as bad as the lovely Highway 401. So Highway 401 is one of the longest highways in Canada, and I find the traffic on that highway to usually be really heavy. So trying to avoid commuting on that highway for too long can really help to trim down your commute time. The fourth con about living in Toronto is our weather. We have 4 different seasons. So you're gonna have those winters, which I honestly don't find to be that bad, but you have those winters where you're going to get some snowstorms and you're going to have to wear those boots, those warm sweaters, hats, mittens, and big coat. And we also have that beautiful spring weather where you'll have to have like your spring attire. So spring and fall, you can kind of wear the same things, like, you know, just a light coat, a sweater, and some fashionable boots or booties. And then in the summer, you of course need to have those light, airy clothing. So because we have 4 different seasons, your wardrobe bill is going to be higher because you have to have a diverse amount of clothing and items like boots and mittens and so forth to ensure that you're dressed appropriately for the weather condition. But I must say, I mean, it's really nice to have snow during the Christmas season and even having like, you know, that beautiful sunny summery season during the summer months. So I do like the 4 seasons, but sometimes it can be frustrating when you have like a big winter storm and you want to get to a certain location, but it's just not the best weather conditions. So, you know, it's a love-hate relationship that I have with the weather that we have in Toronto. And the 5th con is that the property taxes in Toronto could be high depending on the area. So property taxes are something you have to pay if you are purchasing a home, and that tax is going to be going up as the years go on. So you can expect that payment to increase over time. Another thing to take into account is when you are purchasing a home, Toronto has an additional land transfer tax. So in Ontario, we do have the provincial land transfer tax, but Toronto is actually the only city within Ontario that has that additional municipal land transfer tax. So you need to take that into account when purchasing a home and put that amount as a factor into your closing costs. So very important to remember that. If you're a first-time home buyer though, you do get a $4,000 rebate toward your land transfer tax. So that could help to mitigate those costs. But just keep in mind that Toronto does have that additional tax costs that you have to incorporate into your closing costs. And so what I love most about Toronto, and by the way, thank you so much if you made it to the end of the video. What I love the most about Toronto is our culture. Toronto is so rich with culture that it just makes it such a desirable place to live. A lot of family-friendly neighborhoods, very friendly atmosphere. Like, people here just love to help. Everybody says thank you, excuse me. They open the doors for you. Like, it's just such a friendly, family-oriented culture that we have in Toronto. And it makes it such a desirable place to live. And I personally, as a parent, could say that, you know, I'm so happy to be able to bring my kids to Toronto, and I do feel safe whenever I do. You know, it's just a great area to bring your kids to raise your kids and just have a great time. So there's so much to love about Toronto, but my personal favorite is our culture, our people, our neighborhoods. Also, be sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on post notifications so this video could go to more people just like you.